Okay, I'm doing this. I'm making this video about the Mattel Simpsons action figures. This is definitely happening. So John, are you ever going to get around to editing that video you shot footage for more than a year ago?
I'll do it this afternoon.
I've been sitting on this project for so long now, and the truth is, it got to be so overblown that it became kind of overwhelming. I had this whole long convoluted intro about how Mattel and Hasbro had lost their touch by 1990, which could almost have been a video in itself, and it threw everything off balance. So instead, let's very quickly hit the main points.
You have entered Power Drive.
The US National Toy Hall of Fame declared the oldest toy in history to be the stick.
Stick.
In 2004, a 4,000-year-old stone doll head was unearthed by archaeologists in the ruins of a village in the Italian island of Pantelleria.
Flash forward to ancient Babylonia.
Okay, stop. Let's try this again. In March 1959, Mattel introduced the Barbie doll. Kids didn't much care for the taste of dried onion meal, but they loved the doll. Their arch-rival Hasbro adopted that formula for boys a few years later as G.I. Joe, the original action figure. And the two companies were the dominant players in the US market, until Kenner got the Star Wars license and pretty much upended the entire industry, forcing the big two toy firms to adapt. Now smaller figures with lots of vehicles and accessories were in, usually with futuristic sci-fi or sword and sorcery themes. All of this led to the boom period from 1982 through 1986, where we got the reimagined G.I. Joe, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, Transformers, My Little Pony, She-Ra, and on. It was a huge turnaround, especially for Hasbro, which had really been on the ropes at the end of the 70s.
I'm rich again! USA! USA! USA!
For America's favourite toy makers, everything was coming up roses. But those roses contained ready to sting bees. Mattel had flooded the market with He-Man toys, and after 5 years, interest was starting to wane in a very competitive market. Their turnaround strategy revolved around a live-action motion picture from Canon Films. What could possibly go wrong? Hasbro had similar plans to do an animated cinematic trilogy for My Little Pony, G.I. Joe and Transformers, none of which did well. Transformers the movie in particular was savaged by critics and faced a lot of public backlash for murdering a good chunk of the established cast, including everyone's TV truck dad, traumatising a generation of latchkey kids who'd spent the previous 2 years watching him on TV every weekday afternoon. Throughout 1987, public sentiment towards the ruthlessly commercial cartoon/toy IPs really turned sour. Mattel poured a ton of money into Captain Power, a toy designed to interact with its own TV show, and that really rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. And really, none of the new introductions from Hasbro or Mattel during this period made any impact the way the ones from 82 through about 85 had. Visionaries, Battle Beasts, Food Fighters, Computer Warriors all turned out to be relatively short-lived. In a post-Black Monday world, the money for middle-class families to collect these sprawling toy lines and their colossal playsets just wasn't there anymore. Certainly as far as the US was concerned, the bubble had burst. And then a little Hong Kong-based company called Playmates came along with a line of action figures based on an indie comic called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Just like Star Wars 10 years earlier, Hasbro and Mattel had passed on this license, and just like Star Wars, it absolutely changed the game. The much more stern, serious boys action lines of a few years earlier seemed to have fallen out of favour. More colourful, tongue-in-cheek, somewhat silly seemed to be the order of the day. You can see the same trend at play in Kenner's Real Ghostbusters line, which had debuted a few years earlier and which was also hugely successful. And so you can see where this is headed. The Simpsons have been the breakout characters from the Tracy Ullman show on Fox, and were now about to get their own primetime animated series. And at the same time they had a lot of that same lurid, anti-establishment indie comic cred that the Turtles had. Parents and teachers frowned upon them enough that it actually made them cooler in the eyes of kids. It seemed like a slam dunk for Mattel to take the formula Playmates had established with the Turtles and do it on an even bigger and better scale with the Simpsons. But that didn't happen. In fact, Mattel's Simpsons line petered out after a single wave, all of which begs the question, what went wrong? Let's take a look at the figures and try to find out.
Homer.
Beginning with Homeboy himself. Right away I think that the most striking thing about this toy in retrospect is that oddly tall head. Like the earliest TMNT figures, the heads are rubber rather than hard plastic, which adds to the cartoony feel. I ended up with 2 Homers in my collection, and the skin tone on the heads isn't quite the same across both toys. Most likely one's just aged better than the other. Paint apps are extremely variable. One of my Homers has relatively unblemished eyes and teeth. The other looks like he's simultaneously crying and foaming at the mouth. Articulation is about average for an early 90s figure. You have 360-degree rotation at the neck and at each shoulder. Each leg can extend some distance behind and in front of Homer and then move independently. His gut impedes his ability to sit up straight though. Speaking of Homer's midsection, he can also spin all the way around at the waist. Homer comes equipped with a protective radiation mask and a bar clamp. He's also supposed to have his speech bubbles and a safety glove, neither of which I have, so he'll just have to live dangerously. Never mind that. Do you realise Mattel Simpsons gave us an actual inanimate carbon rod? Speaking of Homer's accessories, while researching this I found what as far as I could tell is an undocumented variant. My first Homer's mask just flops around on his head, and I was baffled as to why Mattel didn't just place a tiny peg in the helmet that could fit in Homer's speech bubble hole and hold it in place. My second Homer's mask does fit without the use of a peg, so how did they do it? The second helmet has guides inside it that press against Homer's temples and provide a tighter fit. Turns out this isn't just an alteration of the existing helmet, it's an entirely new mold with a different shape and a brighter shade of orange. The guideless helmet was produced in China just like the figures. The guide version was made in Malaysia, the only item I found in the entire line so far to have that distinction. Overall, I think this is a good representation of Season 1 Homer. I wish he didn't have the Lenny post-plastic surgery grin, but as we'll see later, he's not alone in that regard. Marge has one of the better toys in this line. The shoes, the dress, the colour choices, all on point. The necklace is a separate piece rather than being moulded and isn't quite on model. On the plus side, it's a solid piece of plastic. I've never seen any Marges where this has broken off and there's no danger of it going missing. It also does a decent job of obfuscating the difference in shade between the head and the body. I feel like proportionately I'd have liked her hair to be a little taller, but this is so inconsistent from shot to shot in the first season of the show that I can't get too mad at Mattel for this. Articulation is a little more limited than Homer. You can spin the head around, but the arms are sculpted in such a way that when they raise, they're just smacking her in the face. She looks like she's doing the Hollywood Blondes taunt. Marge doesn't have full waist rotation, but she does have a hinge that enables her to almost touch her toes. Alternatively, she's exceptionally good at limboing. Sadly, there's no independent leg movement going on here at all. In addition to the 5 speech bubbles, none of which mention forgetting our troubles with a big bowl of strawberry ice cream, but it's close. A complete Marge comes with a tray of cookies and an apron that says I'd rather be bowling. Not the most thrilling inclusions, although I'd have a tough time suggesting fun items seen in Season 1 that would work as accessories for Marge. I think Mattel did an exceptional job here as far as the main figure goes, given that the design of the character is in some ways constricting. Sadly, I suspect that selling 8-year-old boys in 1990 an action figure of a 34-year-old stay-at-home housewife was always going to be an uphill battle. It's hard to believe now, but yes, Maggie was sold as a standalone action figure at the same price point as everyone else in this line. She was bundled with a teal ride-on toy. It's effectively just Bart's skateboard with a pair of handles and a sculpted bear head. I don't have it, so here she is on Bart's skateboard. You also get 5 thought bubbles. Suck, suck, suck. A picture of a bear. A picture of a TV. You get the idea. So you don't get much for your money, but likeness wise this is the most accurate figure in the line. The colours are all correct, the sculpt is dead on. Okay, how you sculpt Maggie and Lisa's hair in 3 dimensions will always be open to debate, but other than that I don't see anything to take issue with here. Maggie only has 3 points of articulation. You can spin the head all the way around if you want to recreate that one scene from the foster home episode. Her arms can spin all the way around, so they're always going to be outstretched as if she's doing the aloha arm. For Maggie, this is reasonable. I don't need her to be the Toy Biz superposable Spider-Man. If you want, you can kinda have Marge hold Maggie, but the scaling doesn't quite work. But for what it is, and it isn't much, this is a good depiction of Maggie. Lisa would be mortified if someone ever made a shoddy product with a Simpson name on it, so let's hope she never gets to see this figure that's supposedly in her likeness. What went wrong? How were they able to translate Maggie into an action figure perfectly but drop the ball with Lisa? What's with that expression? The sideways glance, the beady eyes. No one else in the line looks like that. The pearls don't look right. We saw that with Marge, but it's worse here. Okay, it's not a total loss. I think Mattel did a good job sculpting the dress. As always, you have full head rotation. Arms can't be raised further than the face. You've got full waist rotation and even some hip swivel for dancing to Funky See Funky Do. And leg articulation so she can win the Nobel Prize for kickboxing. Lisa only has one accessory, a baby blue saxophone. I don't have it, but here she is with the sax from her Playmates World of Springfield toy. It kinda works, I guess. I'm trying to find nice things to say about this one. It's tough. I really feel like a good Lisa toy would have made all the difference in terms of getting girls on board and helping to broaden the appeal of this line. This isn't it.
Alright, John, just go to Bart. Exactly. Come to the one you love best. Bart!
Bart isn't actually the one I love best in this line, but he is the only toy from the series I bought carded. That means I don't have to make excuses here about the parts I'm missing. And then, as is the way with loose figure collecting and job lots, I ended up with 2 more. I was told that there are no other Barts, but here we are, Bart by the barrelful. Bart's facial likeness isn't as bad as Lisa's, but he's definitely got that season 1 no one's ever fully on model vibe to him. Much like with Homer, I'm not a big fan of the grin. The colour choices at least are nice and vivid. As you'll have come to expect by now, there's full rotation at the neck. Arms can spin all the way around if you force them. Legs can be pulled most of the way forward, but the t-shirt blocks most range of movement going back. The waist seems like it should have full rotation, but it's actually somewhat limited. Bart's skateboard is his only accessory aside from the speech bubbles. Not great. If you're anything like me, you have a very set idea in your mind about what this should look like. It's typically depicted as being bright green and having an orange stripe on top. Mattel went with a red board with yellow wheels and a Bart skull. Even in the season 1 title sequence, the correct colour scheme had been established, so I don't know why Mattel decided to go in such a different direction. I also don't know why it ended up being such an odd squat size and shape. It's a pretty egregious error when this would be the one accessory in the line that I imagine kids would be playing with the most. All in all, I think Mattel did a middling job with Bart, but middling just wasn't going to cut it here. They needed to make a great Bart toy that looked just like the character to draw kids in before they had any chance of getting them to buy the other family members, and they didn't do it. As it happens though, this wasn't the only Bart in the line. I really dragged my feet on getting Bartman. For years I assumed that he was just a Bart repaint with a different head. As it turns out, this isn't the case. In fact, I don't believe there's any parts reuse between these toys at all. Look closely and it becomes apparent that the torso is a different sculpt. The arms on Bartman are slightly thicker and the thumb on his open hand is sculpted differently, presumably to better accommodate his slingshot accessory, which I don't have. Even Bartman's legs are angled slightly wider to give him a more dynamic pose. I figured that maybe the pelvis was a reused part, but the moulding on Bartman's looks like it's wider too. How about that? No parts reuse, it's an entirely new figure. Mattel pulled a reverse Kenner on us. Functionally, Bart is identical to Bartman in terms of articulation. His cape is a rigid piece of plastic that jams into the back of Bartman's rubbery neck. In an astonishing coincidence, finding a loose Bartman with the cape that wouldn't cost a fortune would turn out to be a pain in the neck in itself. More interesting than the toy itself is the inclusion of this character in the line. I guess it adds another Bart figure, plus having a superhero character works if you're marketing toys to boys. But every other character in this line and every accessory is from Season 1. Bartman didn't show up until the end of Season 2, for like 10 seconds. And that was it. I suspect that Mattel and the other licensees were sold on the idea that Bartman was going to be a big deal fairly quick, that Bart was routinely going to be donning the mask and becoming his alter ego, presumably to go toe to toe with Nelson. And then the writers decided, nah, we're not going to be doing that. And so Bartman ended up mostly being confined to supporting material like comics and games outside of the main show, which brings us to the only villain and non-Simpson family member in the set.
Put him up.
Right off the bat, somebody's decided Nelson's colour scheme was too drab to work as an action figure. His hair has gone from a dull brown to a brighter shade. His shoes have white detailing like Bart's, when they should match the pink of his shirt. I really feel like I'm being needlessly fussy at this point. Allow me to continue. There's no spacing between the eyes. To be fair, Nelson's original character design does have the eyes close together, but there was at least a little gap. The ragged spikes on the bottom of Nelson's vest were reduced to a series of vague sculpted triangles. I'm guessing this was due to safety concerns. None of these things are deal breakers. I'm a little more bothered about the scale. In Bart the General, Nelson towered over Bart. In toy form, he is wide, definitely on the chunkerific side. But height-wise, he's only slightly larger, but this is coming from a Transformers collector. Who am I to argue about scale? Nelson's articulation is identical to Bart/Bartman, right down to the limited waist movement. Regrettably, he has no pointing finger for haw-hawing, as this is a recognised figure of menace in the neighbourhood Nelson months, and not that kid who laughs at everyone Nelson months. With that in mind, I wish he had been sculpted with both fists balled up so we could reenact that scene. Oh well, at least Bart can still
Get him right in the family jewels. That little doozy's been a Simpson trademark for generations.
Nelson had an interesting variation as far as his accessory went. One version of the toy came with a cardboard trash can, the other had a plastic one. One thing I never see anyone mention is which one came first, or for that matter why it was changed. I'd like to think the plastic can was the later version and was introduced to make the toy better. If it came first and was replaced with the cardboard one to save a few pennies, that would definitely have been a warning sign that this line was underperforming. If you were hoping for some cool playsets and vehicles in this line, maybe like a family house or Homer's car to sit alongside your sewer playset or turtle van, prepare to not be dazzled. Only one quasi-playset accessory thing was ever released by Mattel, and it was comprised of the two most iconic items in 742 Evergreen Terrace, the couch and the TV, officially known in this line as the sofa and boob tube. Yes, this thing was supposed to represent the Simpson family couch. Like Nelson's hair, someone decided that brown was not a fitting colour for a toy. It also gained an extra cushion, presumably so you can fit the entire family minus Maggie on it. A built-in lever on the back provides a couch gag gimmick, seemingly based on the first one that was broadcast. Place any figure on the right end of the couch, hit the lever and a sort of half-heartedly fall off. Mattel seemed to be losing their edge. Real talk, you guys. I was excited to talk about this toy line, but Snake Mountain, this is not. The other part of this set is the family TV. This is not it. What you're looking at is a Burger King release of the Simpsons family television from 2001. I don't have the Mattel one, but this makes a decent substitute. Okay. Here are some pictures of the actual Mattel TV. There are slides showing different shows and even Super Slugfest that you can swap out. The other big selling point of the TV is that it has a little cart so you can wheel it into the dining room on holidays. Mattel were really big on sticking wheels on everything for some reason. A couple of additional Bart toys were sold in Argentina. Super Bart is a straight repaint of the regular Bart toy with recolored versions of Bartman's accessories. Ninja Bart also uses the Bart mold and was sold in both black and white variants, and actually has what seems to be an entirely original accessory, a grappling hook. What I found curious about these toys is that all of the ones I've seen have no Mattel branding and no indication of who produced them at all. Despite this, carded examples of these toys currently go for anything from $70 to $200 on eBay. That's a lot of dough for some very shoddy looking toys, but it's nothing compared to the rarest known Mattel variant. Save Blinky Bart is yet another repaint of the basic Bart toy, this time in a white and green colour scheme sporting a shirt with Blinky the three-eyed fish on it. Mattel launched a mail-away promotion in December 1990 where anyone who purchased 3 Simpsons figures before March 31st, 1991 and sent them proof of purchase would be sent this toy. But all indications are that Mattel pulled the promotion, likely deciding that the line was a lost cause by that point. Only 3 Save Blinky Barts have ever been found. It's not only the holy grail of Mattel Simpsons collecting, it's pretty much the holy grail of Simpsons collecting, period. But prior to this figure getting cancelled, a second wave was on the cards. Scans from Toymaker magazine reveal what would have been in Series 2. It's very Bart and repaint centric. Carded figures of Baseball Bart, a proper Ninja Bart without the grin, Daredevil Bart inspired by that episode with the jumping of the gorge. There were also 3 retails of Wave 1 figures bundled with larger accessories and in some very tacky new colour schemes that Mattel dreamed up. Bart with a mower, Marge with a shopping cart, and Homer in a big fat party animal Hawaiian shirt with a barbecue. On wheels, naturally. Krusty would have gotten a figure. In true Mattel tradition, his likeness is decent. 2 larger vehicles would have also been produced. One was a nuclear waste truck for Homer that dumps its contents on the driver. The other was the family car, which looks like it would have had some sort of exploding gimmick. It's also a convertible, not unlike the family sedan in Hit and Run. All indications are that this line was a failure. I would hazard a guess that Mattel rushed these toys out to capitalise on Bart mania, and who could blame them? But drab packaging. Why did they release these toys on plain white cards? Underwhelming sculpts, especially on the faces. Questionable choices about who to put in the first wave. And most of all, the fact that collecting action figures of an upper middle lower class nuclear family just wasn't a compelling proposition for kids. It offers no escapism. These characters reflect their own lives, but in toy form. And that's both the greatest strength and the biggest weakness of the Mattel Simpsons toys. As items designed for kids to play with in 1990, they're well designed and do the job. But it was the wrong IP at the wrong time, marketed in the wrong way. Action figures designed for older collectors intended to sit on a shelf rather than to be played with wouldn't be a thing for a good few more years. As the 90s drew to a close, Playmates, who were between Turtles lines at the time, introduced their own line of Simpsons figures. The World of Springfield line was much more collector-oriented than Mattel's offerings, starting out with the main cast and eventually including a huge number of obscure supporting characters and interactive playsets. But that is a story for another time. Wow, so that was something, huh? Though it was unusual to spend 26 minutes reporting on toys, This YouTuber found it impossible to stop talking. It's just really fascinating stuff, folks. Good night. Oh, and the president was arrested for murder. More on that tomorrow night, or you can go to another YouTube channel. Oh, do not go to another YouTube channel.